Hello, welcome to Global Voices with Moishe House. We're just going to let people sign on. I think they're signing on right now, and we have a truly global voices today from all around the world: Brazil, Amsterdam, Israel, Prague, and of course, Denver, Colorado, the center of it all. Thank you all for joining. We're also live on Facebook Live. Just a bit quickly about Moishe House, for those of you who aren't familiar. Moishe House is all about inspiring Jewish homes. There are 120 Moishe Houses around the world serving young Jewish adults, focused on 22 to 30 years old, running 12,000 plus programs a year. And as COVID-19 has arrived, so has the pivots and adjustments for Moishe House. And one of the great things about being a part of this organization is that we're able to see at a very local level what's happening and the impact that's being made both on young leaders, the Jewish community, and different cities around the world. And you've all heard about Expedition 9. We have 250 teams currently in 30 countries and over 3,500 submissions to the challenges. So now is your chance. Please go ahead and take your screenshot that you can submit for this challenge. And before we go into the full session, I want to just introduce Ava. Ava is founder of Moishe House in Prague. She also is a community manager, senior community manager at Moishe House. And Prague has had some really interesting things happen in the last couple days. And so we wanted to just give some insight into a city that is moving more quickly than most. So Ava, will you share a little bit about what's happening with Prague?
Thanks, David. Yes, of course, I'm really happy to share. So we have some glimpses of hope in the Czech Republic. As of today, almost all the shops are open. The beer gardens at restaurants can be open and have up to 100 people. And the same applies to cinemas and theaters and also weddings, which is great. And my friends and I are ready to take the advantage of this and get outside because the weather is getting nicer. The main thing is, though, that we still need to wear a face mask whenever leaving our homes and keep the 2 meters distance from each other, which still makes it challenging. And I think that, you know, sitting in a beer garden 2 meters apart from each other with a face mask can be challenging. So we are getting there, but slowly but surely. In regards of Moishe House in Prague, the residents are not convening for in-person programming yet, but we are monitoring the situation and hope that they can start again soon. And I think that we will be seeing a mixture of some outdoor programs and smaller indoor programs towards the end of this month and the beginning of June. And not only in Prague, but also in Vienna, Germany, I said Austria already, and in Israel. And this will be obviously all in accordance with the local guidelines and policies. But I'm really excited that we are slowly but surely getting to the other side and that we will be seeing more and more in-person gatherings here. And I will obviously keep you all updated.
Thank you, Ava. Stay safe and keep us updated on how that's going. One of the unique perspectives is that since every country and city is going through this, we can see what's happening. A lot of times in the United States, we're looking to the states that have opened up more to see what's happening, what those trends are. And this is even a more unique perspective, getting to look at a different country that's opening up in different ways. So stay optimistic and keep your distance. Next, I want to introduce our host, none other than Ben Lusher. Ben is the board chair for Moishe House. He's amazing. He's a past JCRC chair in Denver, Colorado, has spent a lot of time investing and building Jewish life around him. And while he's not doing that, he's running an oil and gas company, which obviously has its own challenges. So if there's any Q&A questions about oil and gas, you're wondering what's happening there, he's your guy. And I want to just turn it over to Ben in Denver, and thank you again for hosting.
Great. Dave, thanks for that. I really appreciate it. So I had originally joined the board because I really wanted to be a part of an organization that was focused on empowering young people to build a community for themselves and their peers. I always felt like my brand of Judaism never really quite fit within the traditional institutions. And Moishe House has really not only filled that hole for me, but also for people all across the world. I've stayed involved with Moishe House because I believe in a Jewish community building approach that's fun and engaging and self-directed. And I plan to be involved for as long as I can because I want Moishe House to be doing this kind of amazing work when my 3 daughters are a part of the demographic. I also just want to say how inspired I've been by all the residents who are bringing their communities together during such an unprecedented crisis. From the virtual Seders and Shabbats and trivia nights to Expedition Nye, residents and community members are showing amazing resiliency and true leadership throughout all of this. So thank you to all of the residents who are on this call and all of you who are joining us from around the world for all the work that you are doing. So one more thing before I introduce our panelists and jump into questions. I want to let everyone know that you can submit questions via the online message feature in Zoom, and we will try to get to as many of your questions as we can towards the end of the session. All right, so it is now my pleasure to introduce the 3 panelists on our call today. We have Fernanda from Moishe House, Rio de Janeiro. Fernanda, it is great to have you back. She was born and raised in Rio. She currently works for Bait Rio, a Jewish cultural center in Rio de Janeiro. And Fernanda is a founding resident of the Moishe House, Rio de Janeiro, which launched in 2019 and welcomes Jewish young adults from Rio and all over Brazil, including a 1,000-person virtual program that they recently hosted that we're going to touch on later. We also have Sarah from Moishe House, Jerusalem. Sarah was born and raised in Jerusalem. Her mother's side of the family has been there for 7 generations. She attended Hebrew University to study law, currently works for the Israeli Ministry of Finance. We get a lot of questions about why are there Moishe houses in Israel? Why do you need a space for Jewish life in the Jewish state? And that is something we're going to dive into with Sarah in a bit. And finally, we have Timur from the Moishe House, from the Moishe Pod in Amsterdam. Timur is a founding resident of Moishe Pod Amsterdam. He was born and raised in the Netherlands with loose connections to Jewish life. He's grown more connected over the years and today is involved with several local initiatives for the Jewish community. Timur is the founder and director of Oy Vey Amsterdam, the new Jewish hub JCC in Amsterdam, which aims to facilitate and amplify the creation and expression of contemporary Jewish culture. There are about 30,000 Jews in the Netherlands today. Most of them are located in Amsterdam. And the Moishe Pod Amsterdam was our first international pod. So welcome again, everybody, and let's get started. So Fernanda, the first question is coming to you. So when we heard from you in April, the lockdown had just begun, and you were concerned with the rhetoric that you were hearing in the government. Now, I understand the situation has become even more challenging, and there's a lot of conflicting messaging from local governments and the president, plus a growing number of cases and infections. Can you give us a sense of what's going on the ground and what you're seeing?
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, David. Yeah, our situation, the political situation is getting crazier. The number of cases of COVID-19 are growing so fast, and the president is still not caring enough about it. Also, he fired the health minister that was taking it seriously, and in my opinion, it's a shame. One thing that's happening very often is that in many places, the number of sick people is much higher than the number of the hospital beds available. And in fact, Samuca, that's another one resident from Moishe House, Rio de Janeiro, has family members that couldn't get treatment because of this problem. And also Hannah. Hannah is another resident. And also she has family members that are sick and looking for medical help and super sad. Also, a few days ago in Brasilia, Brasilia is the capital of Brazil, many pro-president people protest in person against the Congress and the Supreme Court. And well, it was completely against the health advice to make a protest in person. And the president went to the protest without a mask, and it's so crazy. And there are people here that's afraid to. They're afraid that the president wants to shut down the Congress, and it's pretty scary for us. I have no idea if it's going to happen, but it would be very scary. And about Rio de Janeiro, the president allowed the governors to make their own decision about the crisis. And the governor of Rio de Janeiro is making isolation a priority, but not mandatory. So many people are not respecting the quarantine. And the number of cases are getting very, very higher every day. So it's really dangerous to do it. And that's why the health system is breaking. It's too crazy, the situation. But thankfully, nobody in my family is sick. But of course, I'm afraid of needing medical help because of the hospital situation. That's very critical. And my mother, she's taking care of my grandmother, so she's taking extreme measure. Like she hasn't left the house for more than 60 days, and she's getting a little bit crazy. But we can't complain because everybody's healthy, thanks God, and everybody's safe. So everything's good.
Well, great. Well, thank you for that update. It sounds like a pretty complicated and scary situation. I'm really glad that you and your family and your grandmother are all doing okay. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, you and your roommates, in addition to having full-time jobs, recently organized a 1,000-person virtual event for Jews across Brazil. How did you make that happen, and what kind of learnings can you share with us?
Yeah, we are so proud of this event. We had a big event called Fogo Cruzado in Portuguese. In English, it means crossfire. And we invited 3 very famous rabbis from all over Brazil to answer submitted questions from our community members. So people really wanted to hear from them and to meet them. And we were very surprised that the rabbi said yes for the invitation, and we felt very, very happy. We streamed it like in a live on YouTube, and we worked with a local rabbi to use this technology for that because we didn't have it, and it was pretty nice. And the event attracted the attention of Jews all over Brazil and really grew our Moishe House Rio community. And we are really, really proud of this. And in my opinion, the most important part of the event was that the questions were made anonymously. So people felt comfortable to ask whatever they wanted, no pressure. And I think that the most difficult part of the event was to choose some of the questions because we received a lot of questions. So it was pretty difficult for us. And now people want another one event like this because they couldn't answer all the questions. So we are thinking about a second round of the crossfire with the rabbis. And I wanted to say, to tell you a little bit about our community. Our community in general we have like a mix of community members. So we are trying to make very different kinds of events in a way to reach everybody. So I can see that some members are not working and studying, so they have a lot of free time. So we need to make events. We need to make a lot of events to help them in this moment. And now we are super happy because people from all over the country are joining the events, and some of them live in places that has no Jewish community or have like just a very small Jewish community, and they really want some Jewish connections. So I think that the online events like are an opportunity to have this connection. And they ask us every time if we are going to keep making this kind of events after the situation gets better. And that's a point that we need to think about in the future. Maybe we can make the in-person event, but we also can make one or other like this online. So that's something that we are going to think in the future.
That is so amazing, Fernanda. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for the work that you're doing in your community. All right, so now I want to shift to Sarah and go to Jerusalem. So Sarah, Israel is emerging from a restrictive lockdown. Schools are beginning to reopen in limited capacities. There are public gatherings that are now being permitted. And today, I believe it was announced that by June 14th, almost all restrictions are going to be eased. So can you talk a little bit about how Israel was able to contain the virus? And also, I do want to say I'm thrilled that you're going to be returning to an in-person program for Lag BaOmer. And if you can tell us a little bit more about what the plan is, that'd be great.
Thank you, Ben. So yes, things are getting pretty normal here. We're kind of adjusting to it. As schools are opening, more and more places are opening. Like Ava said, we still need to wear masks and be 2 meters apart from each other, but things are getting back to normal. People can leave their houses and stuff. Overall, I must say that the social distance was pretty hard for Israelis because they love to hug, and it's still permitted. But Israel was able to contain the virus because we were proactive with large-scale measures that many countries enacted later, cutting off traveling and restriction movements and stuff like that helped. Also, we utilized the army to great success to keep measures in place. And we checked on our neighbors, like a lot of people were helping others, and it helped. And yes, we're excited to be hosting a bonfire for Lag BaOmer. It will be an in-person program. We're still not doing indoors programs, but the bonfire is obviously outside. An alumni of Moishe House, Jerusalem, that many of you may know, Avi Salomon, has a big backyard and will do the bonfire in his place. According to local regulations, we will invite a limited number of community members because we can't have everyone come because of all the social distance and stuff like that. It's hard because it's a kind of an event that we would love to blast the word and invite everyone and all of our community members and friends, but we still can't do it. We'll have like around 15 or 14 people, and it will be great. We're looking forward to it.
Well, thank you so much. Do you want to take us through and do a quick learning on Lag BaOmer?
Yes, so we will have a quick Lag BaOmer learning. Lag BaOmer is today, like we said. Lag BaOmer is the 33rd day of the Omer count. It's a festive day on the Jewish calendar. It is celebrated with bonfires, and many visit the resting place of the great sage and mystic Rabbi Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, today is his passing away anniversary day. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who lived in the 2nd century of the Common Era, was the first publicly teacher of mystical dimension of the Torah, mostly known as Kabbalah. On the day of the passing, Rabbi Shimon wanted it to be a day of joy. That's why we're having big bonfires and a lot of dancing and happiness, because that's what he requested. Lag BaOmer also commemorates another joyful event. The Talmud relates that in the weeks between the Jewish holidays of Passover and Shavuot, a plague regards among the disciples of the students of Rabbi Akiva, another big sage, because they did not act respectfully towards each other. And these weeks are therefore observed with a period of mourning. And Lag BaOmer, the deaf ceased. Thus, Lag BaOmer also carries the theme of loving and respecting one's fellow neighbor. I think loving and respecting our neighbors is especially relevant in our days of while we fight the coronavirus and it all gets together. It's a very, very happy day.
Well, thank you for that, Sarah, and Yasher Koach. I think that what an important message for us all to be hearing, especially right now as we all begin to kind of emerge from our quarantines and start to slowly re-enter society. So sometimes when people hear we have Moishe houses in Israel, they want to know more and understand why the Jewish state would need Moishe houses. So what are your thoughts on the role that Moishe House plays and kind of why we need Moishe House and other pluralistic peer-to-peer initiatives in Jerusalem?
So it's a great question, and Jerusalem has many different communities and backgrounds, and sometimes it's hard for young people to find themselves the right community for them. Moishe House Jerusalem attracts young people from more liberal groups. It is a LGBTQ friendly place. It is also a religious place, of course, a Jewish house, but it's not as restricted. It's not as super religious like other places. So people have a connection and a variety of different religious backgrounds and beliefs can come and feel comfortable here with us. It's also a unique place for people who made Aliyah and came to live in Israel from other countries. They're far from their families, and here they found their home. And people who came from very religious backgrounds who are not involved in them anymore. I haven't seen anything like that in Jerusalem or in Israel. It's just really unique. Additionally, I think it's really important for Jewish communities all over the world to connect to each other. And we have the opportunity to do it through Moishe House, like in a global kind of thing. And Israel is a part of it. It's a part of this community.
That's so great, and we obviously agree. And for those of you on the call, we actually have 3 Moishe houses in Israel, one in Jerusalem, one in Tel Aviv, and one in Beersheba. All right, so Sarah, I know that you guys have been pretty busy during the crisis. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the volunteering that you and your roommates have done and what you're learning from the process of planning these opportunities, and if there's anything specifically that your community is looking for?
So during this time of the coronavirus, first of all, we did some volunteer work with the elderly community. Some of us did helped older people to connect to Zoom. That way they could be connected to their communities and their families. And some of us did food delivery to people who couldn't go out. So that was a very nice thing. Another unique project we organized was vegetable pickups for our community. One day I saw on Facebook an ad from an Israeli farm who says they kind of went out of business because they couldn't ship their goods to Europe. Usually they were selling their things abroad. And the things looked great. And I reached out to them and I said, we'll organize a drop-off here in Jerusalem. That way it will be good for them. It will be good for us, for our community, because the market, the shuk, was closed. So we couldn't get fresh vegetable and stuff like that. And it's important to be healthy in this time. So we have we had around 35 to 50 people who came to our house to get free fresh vegetables. And we continue doing it now. Maybe we'll even do it after the coronavirus would be over, because people just love the product and it's fun. And we learned that during this crisis, what our Moishe House community needs has involvement, and we need to support them. However, we can we combined it, and with our community, we supported the larger community here in Israel. It was a great project.
That's just so great and uplifting, and I just thank you for all the work that you're doing. Before we move to our next speaker, just a reminder to everybody, if you have questions, please submit them on Zoom or in your Facebook Live watch parties. All right, let's go to Timur and the Moishe Pod in Amsterdam. All right, so Timur, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands recently described the crisis measures taken as an intelligent lockdown, which we've seen described as some sort of a blend between the very light touch of Sweden and the strict rules that we're seeing in Spain or France. Can you talk to us a little bit about the meaning of an intelligent lockdown and what life is like today in Amsterdam and the Netherlands?
Thanks, Ben. The name came about in part because the Dutch people feel the government shouldn't tell them what to do. The feeling was that the Dutch are not really capable of following rules unless they intrinsically feel themselves that the rules make sense. So it did start very light with few restrictions, but many suggestions. And then photos emerged of people not social distancing or using common sense, and restrictions actually tightened. Overall, the intelligent name also meant government assistance working across industries to meet shifting demand and inventory. A restaurant here called Mediamatic Eten has made the news because they converted small greenhouses into private dining cabins. They sold out of tickets through June pretty fast. And while in many ways our lockdown and experience hasn't been as bad as others, Bet Shalom, which is a Jewish nursing home here, tragically lost 26 elderly residents, which is over 20% of its residents, to the virus. It was a home that prided itself on openness, with people coming in and out for the cafe, bake-offs, public events, and many of the victims were Holocaust survivors. It is something we're all still very sad about.
I am so sorry to hear that, and I'm really sorry that you guys have had to deal with something like that. So I know as you've been doing your work in the community, especially now, I understand that you specifically have been doing some work in giving back to the Jewish community and helping those in need. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, there's an organization here called the YMW, the GMW, which stands for Jewish Social Work, which does social work in the Jewish community, primarily with elderly people, and was created after the Holocaust. When we launched our pod, we proactively reached out to them and built a relationship. And so much of the current Amsterdam Jewish community is located in one area outside of the city, but so many of JMW's clients are also in the city or in areas like Rotterdam. And they reached out to us and see if we could help. We put out a call to our community and we were successful. Our community has been buying groceries, running errands, and being someone to talk to.
I love that. That's just so great, Timur. So you are unique in that the Moishe Pod Amsterdam was our first international pod, something we're very excited about. For those of us who don't know a lot about Amsterdam's Jewish community today, why did you want to bring Moishe House to the Netherlands? And what needs and opportunities for Jewish young adults have you observed so far?
Well, the current Jewish community in Amsterdam is quite fragmented and ruled mostly by religious or political ideas or streams. And our vision for Moishe Pod Amsterdam was the creation of an open and inclusive community that allows all people to proudly and unapologetically really enjoy Jewish culture. Moishe House is an organization that lets you decide how to give meaning to your Jewish life. It doesn't tell you how to do it or what you need to believe in. And for our participants, no matter what their Jewish background is, our goal is for them to feel comfortable. People who don't have formal Jewish background feel they can come to us and learn how to be part of a Jewish community. And religious people come because they can interact with others and not be super observant. Most important to me is flexibility and freedom of observance. There's no underlying motive because we want to send you to Israel or because we want you to have Jewish babies. And at our dinners, you see someone who's Israeli, someone who's super observant, someone who's converting, someone who's Dutch and grew up in the local Jewish community, anyone. So during this time, we're trying to continue this vision. We've done Zoom workshops on making matzo balls and Pesach cakes, and we did a 3-part virtual series with a Jewish educator on Pesach history. We also did an online Havdalah with BYO and local teens, and coming up, we have an interactive Shabbat where, one, we sent out our shakshuka recipe and encouraged everyone to make it for dinner, and B, we asked everyone to prepare a little blurb, about 2 or 3 minutes for each person, to say a few words about how they're doing, what they need, or what they can offer.
That's so great, and I will absolutely follow up with you about the shashuka recipe. It's one of my favorite dishes, so that's amazing that you were doing that. All right, so thank you for that, Timur and Sarah and Fernanda. All right, so we're going to now shift to asking some questions. So for those of you who have already submitted questions, thank you. You are also still welcome to submit questions via the chat, and we will do our best to get to as many as possible. All right, so the first question I'm going to start with is for Fernanda. How do you build on a program that has attracted 1,000 people? So kind of what is your vision for Crossfire as you now kind of think about what you want the second one to look like?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I think that we need to have a lot of hard work. We worked a lot for the event, me, Hannah, and Samuel. And so we try to create a nice flyer to invite the people. And we post it on Instagram and on WhatsApp groups. And we have so many groups from all over the country. And I think that this is very important. Maybe in the next one, we can think about, I don't know, to call, to invite new rabbis, or maybe we can try to separate the themes of the questions. I don't know, we're still talking about the next one event, but I think that the most important thing is to make a nice flyer and to post the flyer. Like people have to see the flyer. So we have so many WhatsApp groups, and I think that it helps a lot. And that's it. Work a lot.
Well, that's great. All right, so we have a lot of questions flying in. So the second question is for David Siegelman. Dave, can you explain a little bit what a Moishe pod is and where it fits within the Moishe House platform?
Yeah, sure thing. Good question. And it's great that Timur is here as well as a representative from that group. So Moishe Houses is what Moishe House has been built on. There are 3, 4, or 5 residents who are living together and running programs. And as we were growing, we were seeing that there were certain communities that might not be large enough, certain cities that might not be large enough for 3, 4, 5 residents in the number of programs that they're running each month. But they still are very significant Jewish communities that need young adult Jewish life and Jewish programming. And so we opened up the opportunity and piloted, starting last year, Moishe pods, 2-person Moishe houses, 2 peas in a pod. And we now have about 15 Moishe pods around the world. They like houses, but they're hosting 3 or 4 programs a month and engaging thousands and thousands of young Jewish adults.
Great. Thanks, Dave. All right, so the next question coming in is from Dan Hammerman. This question is for Sarah. So Sarah, the question is, did you have any Moishe House programs for Yom HaSma'ut or Yom HaZikaron? And if so, how did your community adapt to observe these special days during this unprecedented crisis?
So actually we did not have special events for these days. On these days, I think most of us were watching TV. They were like national ceremonies for Yom HaZikaron and for Yom HaAtzmaut, and everyone was watching TV, and we saw, our president and our prime minister there talking, and so we thought about it that we shouldn't have something for just our community if we're having something national that everyone is connecting together. So that's why we decided not to do this year something and participate on the national things who got us all together.
Well, that's great. That's great, Sarah. All right, so to Fernanda. Fernanda, here's a message, a question from Rachel Kalnicki. How are you reaching out to Jews in other states that have no organized Jewish life?
Well, online, everybody can join, people from all over the world. So we have like a contact in a state, and this person knows another one person. So I think that everybody like is having access of the event. So when we realized that everybody not everybody, but a lot of young Jewish people from Brazil are joining the event. So I think that's like this. People knows other people, so something like this.
That's great. That network effect is so important, and getting people just to reach out is so great. So for Timur, this next question is from me. Have you been able to grow the Moishe Pod community at all during the COVID pandemic? And if so, how? And if not, what are you trying to do when everything is eventually lifted?
This is a great question. While our focus hasn't really been on trying to grow during this time, but really focusing more on helping our direct environment, our community, talking to people, checking in on them. One of our Moishe House members, Moishe Pod community members, was ill, so we asked people around to send him get well cards, and we asked people to look at their neighbors and see if they're doing all right and if they need any help. But because we're partnering up with different organizations and we're actively showing people how we're helping other people, and people are really into this. So we see that more people are joining us, even though we're not trying to actively look for more people to join us. It's happening naturally during the crisis also.
That's great. Thank you. All right, Timur, we have another question for you. This one is also from Dan. Do you know what the expected timeline for the reopening is in Amsterdam? And are there any businesses that have already committed to reopening on any certain dates?
That's also a good question. The government has come out with a plan of slowly reopening businesses over the summer. So 1st of June, certain businesses will open. I think people will be allowed to gather in groups of 30. Then in July and August and September, it will be more and more eased. And yeah, we just have to see how it goes. With the few restrictions that are being lifted right now, more people are going outside, are getting together. So we don't know what the response will be. So if that will mean that the coronavirus will come back and infect more people, this might mean that the restriction will be tightened again. But I think in the Netherlands, the approach is planning on opening up slowly during the summer, so that in September, things will be relatively back to normal with the 1.5 meter society. But if things don't go the way we want them to see, then the restrictions will have to implement it again.
Got it. Speaking of that, so Sarah, now that you're bringing people together in person, what kind of precautions are you taking to ensure that you're maintaining a safe environment for all of your community members?
So first of all, like we said, the amount of people who would come to our event is limited. We'll keep social distance. This bonfire that we're having is outside, so things are safer. Of course, we need to be with masks. We'll have a lot of alcohol gel around and a lot of things that will make sure that no one is that things are safe for everyone.
Mm-hmm. That's great. All right. So I have one last question for each of you. So, and it's going to be the same question. Can you tell me, over the past really month or two, has there been a really meaningful or special Shabbat experience that you guys have had while you've been in lockdown and quarantine, whether it's been a virtual program or being with, with your roommates? Can you each just tell us kind of one cool thing you've done on Shabbat? Why don't we start with Fernanda?
So we can't do it virtual because I keep Shabbat, so I can participate. But we try to post every Friday before Shabbat a flyer with the time that we need to light the candle. So it's something that I think that's very nice because people can do it at home. And we try to do it every Friday at home to light the candle and to make a Shabbat dinner. And after Shabbat, also we like to post things about Shabbat, and that's it. I hope that in the future we can make another Shabbat dinner with community members in my house, because I really miss this. And yeah, that's it.
That's great. Sarah, what about you?
So, like Fernanda, we can't have virtual programs on Shabbat, but we did two things. First of all, a couple of times we had challah baking before Shabbat, so it gives a sense of getting ready for Shabbat with our community. And the second special thing is that all four of us, we work together every Shabbat now for the past 2 months, and we don't have any, we can't use our phones or stuff, so we were just together the whole Shabbat. And usually, I don't think we ever had a Shabbat dinner that we are alone without our community members and guests. So it's not what we aimed for, but I guess it was special and got us together, and we're a family, so we miss our community, but I think it was a great opportunity to get to know each other on the deeper level.
That's so great. And Timur, what about you? Any special things that you and your roommates have done on Shabbat?
Well, one of the perks of living in Amsterdam is that our time, the summertime, makes it very light until very late. So Shabbat only starts after 9 p.m. on Friday. So this Friday, we will have a Shabbat dinner before 9 p.m. We start at 6 p.m. and we're doing the Shakshuka Shabbat, where everyone will make shakshuka and people will be able to share something. We haven't done this before. This is the first time we're doing it. We're very excited about it. What we have done, though, is organize a Havdalah service together with Bibuayo, with teenagers from the Netherlands, and that was really special. It was for Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Remembrance Day, and we had a Holocaust survivor from the Netherlands who we interviewed, and it was super meaningful and beautiful. It was really a nice way to connect.
So great. Well, thank you all. Thank you all so much for spending time and being here with us today and sharing your stories and everything else. I now want to kick it back to Dave to close us out.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, residents. Thanks for being on, everybody that's on Zoom and Facebook Live. We really appreciate the insight. It gives us a glimpse into where everyone is headed and where we'll be headed as well. And thank you for all you're doing for your community members and the wider the wider people around you. So thank you very much. And next week at 11 a.m. Eastern, we're also not just going to hear from residents, but also from the ground up in a grassroots way. Four residents and alumni came together to create a Shavuot program that's now spread to 30 Moishe houses for 25 hours of Jewish learning and connection. And so we want to share a little bit about how that works, doing a truly global program for more than 24 hours. And we're excited about it. If you want information, you can email us if you want to participate in it as well. And we'll be sharing about that as well. So thank you all again. Stay safe, stay healthy. And we're excited to be continuing to do this work of inspiring Jewish homes. Thank you.